with regards to long form content and making sure that the narrative fits in with things that are going to help people, not long ago you released a video that did pretty well yourself, but in terms of, it wasn't necessarily clickbait content, it was a real open, genuine letter to Stephen Bartlett, who, when you're sat on the right side of the fence in the fitness industry, if I don't mind calling it that, the side of the fence that has morals and value, Stephen Bartlett's message doesn't quite hit the point. And I could tell you were insanely passionate about putting your point across to Stephen in his Diary of a CEO podcast.
Yeah, well, coming back to my earlier point around evidence-based information, I felt that Stephen then started to re-proliferate clickbait, non-evidence-based nutrition advice, especially nutrition, into the social media sphere. And I suppose I wanted to do my bit to hold him to account. And I've previously experienced that kind of stuff where people have like called me out and stuff. And actually, I am better for it as a result. I looked at myself and I said, well, actually, I need to maybe like reframe how I'm approaching this. I maybe need to consider that there's a certain audience that may not have the experience or privilege or whatever of compared to my background. And then I was misaligned with some of the evidence and unaware of some stuff. So I think it's actually an opportunity for people to grow if they're willing to take that criticism on board. And we should always seek, constructive criticism. And hopefully I was constructive in giving that criticism. But for someone that's that big with that much power, not to have these kind of stop checks in place where it's like, hang on, are we doing the right thing by here? Are we moving society forward? Or are we, going backwards to, a more Neanderthal state? And as soon as I sort of start to see that evolve, I was like, you are creating more confusion in the world of nutrition that we've been working really hard to create clarity on. And the problem is I looked at the comment section of the Lane Norton podcast he did, and it was interesting, and you could see how much of an echo chamber he's created around nutrition misinformation, because the comment section was all like, we all know calories, aren't a thing. We all know you've got to like eat clean or go keto or fast or whatever. And I just thought, wow, that's what we're dealing with. We've got to try and break that echo chamber, which is extremely difficult, re-educate people. But then the next week, there's another guest sort of flying in the face of, what has been kind of said and agreed upon. So that's my frustration, that when I compared him to someone like Chris Williamson's show, and I can imagine you're the same, and I tried to be the same when I was a podcaster, the conversation evolves and the information gets stacked to then a coherent message. Whereas Stephen's shows like one message one week, polar opposite the next week, and then people are sitting there going, how do I make sense of that? And it's because Stephen isn't doing the job of making sense of the information. He's just doing an interview and publicizing information. And for me, that is not acting with integrity in the podcast space.
A 1,000,000% agree with you. I was going to say the same kind of thing. It's almost like when it comes to my show, Chris Williamson's show, it's like it is genuine episodes. They do, obviously, every week I'll speak to somebody different about something different, but it's around the same kind of message: how to get 100% out of your life, what do you have to do, what do you do to look after yourself to get that person, to get that version of you out. That'll be something similar. And Chris Williamson's the same. How did you become modern? What are the messages that you'd share with the world to make sure that you can become wise and get better and become a better person? Whereas Stephen Bartlett's show is almost like it's individual movies with a different narrative every week. It's like it's not episodes. It's this person's going to say this. And you know what? Like, I may be completely wrong, but I would be surprised if he even generated the questions to ask as well. I believe that they're set up for clickbait material so that his viewership or comment section or whatever can go through the roof. I mean, it may be a bit of an outside guess, but when you look at the reels that are released, like you said in your video around, it's almost like the message that's going to get the biggest reaction is used, whether there be integrity and value behind that or not. It doesn't matter, because they've got the answer they want that's going to get the biggest response or the biggest hit rate on viewership and listenership.
Which is a shame, but hopefully if more people keep saying it, then something changes.